Today on the Monarchy Movement, we're diving into one of the most pressing issues shaping the future of our country, immigration. Joining us is a very special guest, Demba Cissé. Am I saying the last name correct?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. An immigration lawyer and an academic affiliated with the University of Ottawa. Demba brings a wealth of knowledge and first-hand experience of navigating Canada's evolving immigration system. He's been on the front lines helping individuals and families find their footings in this country while also keeping a close eye on the policy shaping their future. Demba, it's an honor to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So right off the bat, I want to get right into the nitty-gritty on the overview of the recent immigration policy changes, since there's been so many drastic ones in the last 2 years. So you tell us, the last 1 to 2 years, which have really shaped or evolved the immigration policy.
You had a lot of changes actually in immigration. To understand what it is, you need to. I need to explain a little bit more what is like immigration in Canada. You have like temporary residents, like students, like temporary workers or visitors, and then you have like permanent residents. Before, in Canada, the government just controlled the number of permanent residents in Canada. There was no cap on temporary residents. Basically, if universities needed like 2 million students, well, the market dictated whatever will happen.
Correct.
Now, in the last 2 years, we had a lot of pressure on the temporary residents, and the government decided to actually put a cap on the temporary residents to control it, the same way it used to control like the permanent residents.
Right.
That's what defined everything, because now you realize that there is caps on number of students, there are rules to that will affect the number of workers allowed in the country, etc., etc. And why is that? It's because of the pressure on, like the economy, the pressure on the workers already in Canada, etc., etc. The rise of like the cost for everything, like rents, like that changed the landscape.
Would you say that was
immigration.
would you say that was one of the driving factors? Or is
Probably the
driving?
main,
Yeah.
the main driving factor, because again, politicians will react to what they see in society. If they believe that there are too much pressure on your wallet,
Right.
they will react to that. If it's too much let's say, okay, let me give you an example. You have students coming in the country, you have workers, they need to live somewhere. They need to find a place to live. They will pay rent.
Right.
Now it's going to become scarce if it's too much. And if the rent is going up, Canadians, permanent residents will feel the effect. And then they're like, oh, maybe there are too much of them. What's going on? Politicians will pick up on that and say, hey, maybe it's too many people. There is like an effect on healthcare. There is an effect on the time that you spend waiting for treatment at the hospital, things like that. So they will react, and then they'll decide which way they'll go.
So then who do you think is the most affected right now in terms of these policies or the changes happening?
Well, do you mean Canadians versus like the immigrants?
Well, let's talk about the capping at least, since now they're issuing caps. What would you say is one of the most what's the biggest policy change they made right now? Because I know Carleton University right now is crying because they built a lot of their business models on the students.
There are so many changes. I don't even know which one to pick. Students are very affected, but like they international students are paying billions to universities, colleges, and everything in Canada.
Right.
It's a huge economy.
That's a very big one.
Huge. So people are not coming to Canada anymore because there is a cap. So University of Carleton, yeah, of course, they will, pardon my French, they will cry because it's a loss of revenue.
Oh, they're crying for sure. They're crying.
You have a lot of college in Ontario, Quebec that are feeling the pressure because it's like half of their revenues that is gone. And so they're feeling it. To answer your question, pretty much everyone is going to feel that.
It's a shame.
Yeah,
It's a shame because there is a lot of abuse happening. And then I guess that was being pushed on the political lens
yeah,
very much compared to the other ones. It's because we have a lot of, there was a lot of Indians that at some point we've worked with, and a lot of them now are crying and there's too much discriminatory. They were talking about a lot of discriminatory against them, and a lot of them now are saying that we're leaving. But then you see both sides where the other Canadians are like, yeah, let them leave. We don't want them here anyways. And then the other side is, everybody deserves a chance.
yeah.
But if you're coming in on that new political lens, like Trump is pushing that, if you're coming into the country illegally or on false pretenses,
Yes.
Then you should leave. So, and are these some clients that are calling you right now? Are these the type of people that are giving you a call?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, as an immigration lawyer, I deal with pretty much everyone. So refugees, students wanting to come to Canada, temporary workers, people who are already here and who want to become permanent residents. What I can tell you, and this is my view, immigration is a chance for Canada. I am an immigrant. I came here about 20 years ago.
Likewise.
There you go. It's a chance. But like everything, it has to be controlled. It has to be regulated. Otherwise, if you have excess, you have like pushback. So of course, if Canadians see immigrants as partners, they will love them. But if they become like competitors, if they become people that are taking their jobs, if they're people that are doing like asylum, for example, in Quebec, a lot of people are coming through Quebec for the asylum system, and they stay in Quebec. That's the problem. You don't have that many people in New Brunswick or in Manitoba, for example. So Quebecers will feel the pressure, and then you will have resentment about immigrants. That's the shortcut. But generally speaking, immigration is a positive factor for Canada because without immigration, well, the country can't function. I'm telling that straight.
Did they say that last year was the largest amount of immigrants? I think they were saying that they've ever introduced into the country, around 500,000 or so.
Probably it was.
I don't understand the point system though. I don't know if you can explain the point system. You know how they have different ridings or jurisdictions that especially for the temporary workers. Well, I don't understand the point system per se.
To become.
Because a lot of them go to Toronto.
Yeah.
Right? Because you just said Quebec. I don't know which one's the easiest to get into if you want to get into a temporary worker foreign program.
There are so many that it's hard actually to say which one is the easiest. But generally speaking, it's harder to get in Quebec versus the rest of Canada.
Why is that?
Because Quebec actually can select its immigrants, his temporary workers, his students, etc. There is something that is called in French like CAQ, Certificat d'Acceptation du Québec. It's the acceptance of Quebec that a temporary resident is going to live temporarily in its territory. And you have the CSQ, Certificat de Sélection du Québec. So the same concept, but for somebody who wants to live permanently. So Quebec has its say. If they say, well, we're going to cap it to 10,000 people per year, well, that's what they're going to do. You don't have the same threshold in the rest of the country.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Quebec can decide. The rest of the country, well, it's federal. So basically, let me give you a very simple example. The principle in Canada, if you want to work in Canada, you need to have like a work permit. That work permit can be closed, meaning that you're tied to an employer, or it can be open. You can decide to work for anybody you want. To get that, the employer needs to prove to the government that they didn't find a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident to do the job. It's called the LMIA. Okay? It's the Labor Market Impact Assessment.
Correct.
Okay. So, you have areas in Canada where you don't need that. I'm going to give you a very simple example. You're a French speaking. You want to work in Ottawa in a job which is either French or bilingual. you don't need an LMIA. If
Really?
if you live and work in French outside of Quebec.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
That's called mobilité francophone, so French mobility, because there is a shortage of French speaking people outside of Quebec. So there is that program which is designed outside of Quebec for temporary workers who want to work.
Is that part of the preservation of the French language? Is that part of the effort? That's what it is?
Yeah. But that program that I mentioned, you may have different, you have so many, depending on where you want to work and what you want to do.
Yeah.
So what I said is true for construction, it's true for health, it's true for, you have industries where you don't have to prove that there is shortage because the government already knows, so they make it easier, except in Quebec.
Interesting. I never
Quebec
knew that.
is very special.
So they can just put a threshold where accepting 10,000, everybody else is
Yeah.
held under jurisdiction
Yeah.
federally. So the construction ones, I do know for a fact that they didn't really need, but I think there were red seal trades, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Construction, you have areas in Canada where it's hard. There is it's scarce, for people working. You have health, you have transformation alimentaire. How do you say that? Whatever is related to food. But I mean, if you are a baker,
Sure.
basically everything is going to be easier for you because we know that we're missing people in those areas. So health, construction, etc.
So food and health, I'm guessing? Part of
Absolutely.
the agriculture?
Agriculture as well. So it's going to be easier for you wherever you are in Canada because we know that we need people. But some other areas, that's going to be tough.
I find the things that are more blue collar has suffered compared to everything else. Everybody likes the technology. I feel like everything has cycles.
Yeah.
And then we've seen in the construction industry myself, I've been here for over 10 years. We've suffered a lot in terms of finding the right talent or even people that want to continue doing this, right? So
Yeah. You have actually, companies that are not closing, but almost because they can't find the right people. Right now,
Yeah.
I'm going to give you an example.
Yeah.
There is a cap in Quebec where if you have you can hire temporary workers.
yeah.
The cap is, I think, 10 or 20% of the total workforce that you have. It's even worse, for example, in areas like Montreal or Laval. If you have 6% of chômage, how do you say chômage? Unemployment. 6% of unemployment in the area, you can't hire foreigners. You have to find Canadians or permanent residents. But if you can find the right talent, what do you do?
That's the
In
question.
construction, well, you're screwed.
That's the question.
You are screwed.
I agree with
You
you.
can't actually, hire anybody.
So
Why?
what would your recommendations be? Because as an example, in this industry, like steel workers are hard to find, masoners are extremely rare.
Yes.
Fine, roofers are a dime a dozen, but there's a lot of these specialty trades where it's extremely hard to find the right talent.
Well,
And if you had to hit that threshold, because did they not just increase the number? Did
they actually decreased it.
they decreased the number.
They did. Because again, they want, like I said, they want to control the number of temporary immigrants in Canada. Before, you didn't have that cap. You could have 2 million students, you can have 3 million temporary workers. It was not controlled. The market dictated actually how many people were
Right.
allowed in Canada.
Right.
Now there is a cap. The same way they control the number of permanent residents there will be in Canada, they control the temporary workers. And they say, for example, 400,000 students in Ontario, regardless of, the need for, the number of applicants. They will say 10% of foreign workers in that industry, regardless of the needs. And that's a problem. That's actually the major problem, in my opinion, because Canada is a federation.
Right.
Whatever is true in Alberta might not be the same thing in Nova Scotia.
Right.
So if you put 10% as a cap for everyone, you're basically not considering the reality of the province or the industry or the city, and that's a big issue.
So they should do it provincially then.
Exactly. Not only provincially, but also like listen to the MPs. They know they know their circumscription. They know the needs. They know what's going on. Whatever is happening in Saguenay is not the same thing that happens in Ontario or, Toronto.
I agree.
So, like listen to them, and
I agree.
instead of doing like a cap which is general for the country or for the province, look at things, locally.
So because we were talking about before the shifting of the public opinion, what have you seen now with real live cases and things you're seeing with your own two eyes on how people are viewing now temporary workers, students?
How
'Cause it's
Canadians actually see.
Exactly, because now it's becoming extremely divisive. How we're talking.
Absolutely.
What's your opinion? Give us some stories of what you're seeing live now with some of even your cases you're working on.
Well, I work in different cases. It's hard to pick and choose, but what I can tell you is it really depends. Some people, I have that baker in Quebec who's calling me pretty much every day to see if there will be a change in the policy from Quebec so he can hire more people. Otherwise, he's crying that he may have to close shop.
Which is a reality, yeah.
Which is like a true reality, because he will lose 4 or 5 employees this year because they can't renew the work permit. Why? Because there is a cap of 10%. He can have more than 10% employees that are foreigners. So if he can't renew, well, he's going to close shop because he won't have business. He can't actually, satisfy the population who wants to come and buy cakes or bread or whatever. That's real stories. That's people that came in Canada 2-3 years ago that are not permanent residents yet, but that they will have to actually go back home. Why? Because they can't renew their work permit. Again, they had life here, they had plans, they had all that. That's one side of the story. The other side of the story is that you have a Canadian worker who's like, I can't find a job. Why? Because if I'm the employer, it's going to cost me less to actually pay the fees to make somebody come from Morocco, Burkina Faso, Senegal, etc. He's going to come, and then I'm going to pay him actually less than what I would have paid the Canadian, even if it's illegal. Why? Because I will actually talk to the foreigner and tell him, hey, I know we agreed on $25 per hour, but I'm only going to pay you 17. If you don't agree, well, I will send you back. What do you decide? I have horror stories like that.
That's disgusting though at the same time.
It is, but this is a reality. It's a reality. So you have actually both sides of a story. Always, you have good stories like immigration is positive, but you also have like that reality for the Canadian who can't find a job and who's going to say, hey, what's going on? I'm trying to find a job. I can't.
I feel like a lot of employers nowadays, not especially since I am one, they don't know how to inspire to lead their guys. So a lot of the times now they feel that if you were to take on these, and by the way, I hear about it all the time since in this industry, a lot of guys have taken on foreign workers. And a lot of the times it's almost like you're locking them. It's like modern slavery, I want to call it.
It is exactly
because
what it
you
is.
either shut your mouth, or I send you packing, and they all shut their mouths anyways because they don't want to go back to. Let's say some of them are from Brazil. They don't want to live back in the favelas. A lot of the Masoners that we're talking about, stuff like that. So no, it's honestly a form of modern slavery.
It is, and Canada has been actually condemned, like with the United Nations.
Interesting.
Oh, absolutely. United Nations say that work permit which is closed is actually, well, not illegal, but that shouldn't happen because you guys are doing, um, you are helping employers to actually enslave people.
In
They're
other
tied
words,
to you. There is nothing they can do. You gave that example about that Brazilian who preferred to be paid 17 versus 25 because he knows that in his country that will be less. He can't go back. He took debts to come to Canada. He can't go back. So many people are counting on him. There is shame if he goes back, etc., etc. So you have a lot of pressure. So you accept whatever they're offering you, and well, you just take it, you suck it up, and you close your mouth, you shut your mouth. That's the truth. And so few of them know that there is a law that if the employer is not treating you fairly, you can actually obtain like an open work permit for vulnerable persons.
really?
Oh, absolutely.
So they
I
would
did.
convert it from
Yeah.
closed to open.
You still need to do the proof to show the evidence that you were mistreated, etc., etc.
And then you call Demba Cissé.
And actually, I have a very real case when I built a case like it was 50 pages. I sent some graphic photos to IRCC saying, "Hey, this employee was hurt doing a job that he was not even supposed to do. So the employer forced him to go to his place, his own place, cut the grass.
Yeah. Okay.
He did that. He almost cut his fingers in half. And the employer said, no, you're not going to ER. Why? Because I will have to pay for it, etc., etc. I don't want them to know. Just, I'm going to stitch you up. And then 2 days later, you come back to work.
What is he,
I
Frankenstein?
sent-
He's stitching him up himself? Interesting.
I have the pictures. I sent it to IRCC saying, hey, this guy needs an open work permit. Luckily, they gave it to him in less than a month. Why? Because he was enslaved. Literally, there was no different word. There is no other word than that. He was enslaved.
Yeah, I believe him.
And, well,
I've heard there's been a lot of horror stories that have been coming out of BC. And it's crazy because it's really feeding into the rise of the anti-immigration rhetoric, right? So, and then I've seen the horror stories myself. I understand why employers would want to go the closed route because if we're gonna invest,
yeah.
we want obviously the gentleman to be invested here and all the other stuff. But then it comes down to the character of the business, the owner of the business.
For sure.
So that's why I always wondered: are they doing like a character and fitness test to the employer if you're gonna be?
No, not
Because
really.
obviously there's a lot of different things. Like if you have 1,001 OLRB cases, let's say, because obviously we're in Ontario here.
Yeah.
Do they take that into factor when you're doing an LMIA, or it's just?
No, a lot of things are taken in consideration in an LMIA. You also have a list of employers that are inadmissible because they didn't respect the law or whatever. So
That have already made infractions, you mean? That have brought in temporary foreign workers?
absolutely, yeah,
Okay.
it does exist. But the
Yeah.
principle in Canada is that we believe you. It's in good faith. You don't have an infraction before. Well, go ahead.
Try it out.
Until you prove that you're not trustworthy. Then the hammer comes down. But the proof is very hard to do. And a lot of people are going, through with it.
Because they have to document it, which you're not doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when it comes down to so let's talk about economic effects, because now with the immigration there was such a massive wave, right? The strain on the public service, healthcare was a massive one.
The struggle is real.
Yeah.
For sure. The struggle is real, but it's real for everyone. That's what I want to say. Of course, you will hear people say Canadian first, etc., etc. But those people who came in Canada, most of them didn't cheat to be here. So yes, there must be like a regulation, and I think the government is doing that right now. Too little, too late. That's my opinion.
I agree with you.
But they understand now that there is a struggle and that the immigration like must be controlled before you. If you want to welcome someone in your house, you have to make sure that you can welcome him properly. If he comes and like there is no bread for everyone, that's an issue. If he comes and you live like 10 people in the same house, one bathroom, that's going to be an issue. And the owner of the house is going to say, well, no, I want to be able to use my bathroom first. If I have a second one, then I can welcome people. So that's what's going on right now. Canadians are a little bit less welcoming because immigration is a bit of an issue. In my opinion, we can control it. It's just a matter of time, and that's what the government is trying to do with the cap on temporary workers, with being very strict on the rules, because you don't need to change the law. You just need to give instruction to the agents of IRCC or ASF or CBSA and tell them, hey, before I gave you latitude to accept or refuse. Now, if the application is not perfect, you refuse it. That's what's happening right now. You have stricter rules. They don't need to change
clearly
the law.
weren't
The law
doing
is the same, but the way they apply, they follow the rules is just different.
Because they clearly weren't doing their job, especially if you had a couple known terrorists. I don't remember if you remember the fiasco. I think it was months ago.
Yeah.
You have a terrorist working at CBSA. What kind of vetting process are you doing? How can you allow that to happen anyways? But
hard to comment because I don't have all the facts. But obviously there is a screw up if known terrorists were able to do that. I just hope, that they fix it and they fix it quick.
I hope they do, right? Because there's, like you were talking about, there's a lot of regional disparities anyways between New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and all the other stuff, right? So they have different type of immigration success, I'm guessing is what you're saying, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's the PNP, pretty much. PNP is Provincial Nominee Program, where a province is allowed to say, hey, you know what? I'm Saskatchewan. And in Saskatchewan, we need a lot of plumbers, for example.
Right.
So we're going to give incentives to plumbers to come in Canada, to become permanent residents. And as a province, we have the right. It's different for, from Quebec.
Yeah.
But they can give incentives and say, hey, we need plumbers, and we are going to give them points in the express entry system in a way that will incentivize actually plumbers to come and live in Saskatchewan. By doing so, they can have more plumbers and they can definitely, close the gap on their needs.
That's
That's
interesting.
what it is.
Do we have a similar, in your opinion, from what you've seen, when it comes down to the labor wages?
Yep.
Of course, in America, that was a big problem for them, right? Because it was illegal, undocumented immigrants. You can pay them whatever it is, cash.
Yes.
Are we having a similar problem, or is it just much of a lesser scale
Yeah, it's definitely a much lesser scale.
compared to what they are going through?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Here, pretty much in Canada, if you don't have, paperwork, it's going to be very, very difficult for you. Unless, you use somebody else's paperwork, you can go to the hospital. You're always at risk if, you're being controlled by police or by CBSA when they do checks in the enterprises and everything. It's going to be a very difficult life for you. And that's the reason why people are saying, hey, you know what? I don't have my ID. I'm going to apply for refugee. I'm going to go and try with the asylum system. Well, I'm a student. I could not actually go and study for whatever reason, good or bad. I don't want to go home. What am I going to do? I'm going to apply for asylum. Why? They will give you a work permit. You will not go in front of a judge before 2 to 3 years.
Oh, wow. So you're still here for 2 to 3 years?
2 to 3 years. before you actually come in front of a judge.
Do they know that as a well-known loophole, though?
Oh, they do. They do know that. So they're trying. Well, that's what I hear. It's not a law or
Of
or a
course.
regulation right now, but they're trying to control the people who can actually apply for asylum. Saying like, I don't know, if you were a student and for whatever reason you didn't apply within like 90 days. I'm just making this up. You can't apply anymore as a refugee. But it's hard because Canada also has like international obligations. So people applying for refugee are saying, I cannot go home because if I
Right.
do, I'm going to be in danger for specific reasons. So Canada has to protect me.
And that's for the asylum seekers.
And
right?
that's for
a
the
status.
asylum. Yeah. So basically, you arrive in Canada as a student, as a temporary worker at the airport or after. You can say, hey, I'm claiming asylum because I can't go back. And Canada must treat your file, due process,
Right.
work permit. You don't see a judge before 2 to 3 years. And in the meantime, you live in Canada. In the meantime, you may build a family. You know, so many things may happen.
Obviously, you've seen it yourself. Everything in inflation and the cost of living and everything has increased.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys that I've seen now have said, you know what, I can't even afford to live here anymore.
That's
And
very
people
hard.
that have left already that were Canadian citizens that are like, you know what, they had an opportunity overseas.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say the work contract came to an end and they were there for 3 to 5 years. They're coming back to a really big, different reality. And it's crazy because when I was looking at some of the statistics and they were saying, I think last year they brought in 500,000 immigrants.
Yeah.
But we saw the cost of housing, what it's been doing the last few years. So clearly clearly
and
there
no.
has to be a disconnect somewhere. So I don't know where it
Yeah.
is.
Yes and no. So 500,000 permanent resident. That was 500,000 was permanent resident in Canada.
Okay.
It was not the temporary temporary residents. It was not students, workers, or visitors. It was not them. It was people that were meant to live in Canada forever, permanent residents.
Right.
500,000. In my opinion, Canada can absorb that. But you don't have to look at the equation in just one side, permanent residents. You
Right.
also have to see how many temporary residents you have. Because if you have 500,000 permanent residents, but you have like 5 million temporary residents, you do have a problem for sure.
Is that where the problem's lying right now?
I believe so, and that's the reason why the Canadian government decided actually to put a cap on temporary residents as well, saying, hey, well, not only they did that, they also reduced the target on permanent residents by 10%, 10 or 20. I think it's between 10 and 20, but before it was 500,000 people that will become permanent residents. Now it's 420 per year, I think. And they didn't change that. But what about temporary residents? Even if you reverse the course, what about those who are already in Canada?
I agree with you.
It's not like a car when you actually brake and it stops right away. No, it's like a ship. If you decide actually that you want to stop, it will still continue.
I love that
until-
analogy. Yeah,
That's what it is. So what I'm saying is,
you're right. It's like a ship.
it's like a ship. So whatever change of policy you're going to apply today, you won't see the effect until like a little while.
You're so right because I was even thinking about it. It was a little too late now because you already brought in all these people. You already see
They're
the
here.
you protesting. You see the protesting happening.
Yeah.
Whatever the race or the nationality is, you know, we're not going to get
It's
into
no,
that.
no, absolutely
it,
not.
It means nothing. But I'm just saying you have them in PEI. They're showing you everywhere else.
Yes.
Right. And you're right. There is a lot of financial commitments that they've made. I'm Lebanese Palestinian.
Right.
As an example, small. You're an immigrant as well.
As well.
I talk to my cousins back home all the time. Some of us have now left here to go back home because, you know, whatever, for their own reasons.
Whatever
They don't like the
reasons.
rhetorics or whatever it's happening. Right?
Yes.
So anyways, they go back home and they give you these examples. If I can say it very easy, one of my cousins will be like, oh, you know what? We went to this place and and we were able to feed 15 guys best looking food. Lebanese people know how to cook. I don't care what anybody. I don't care what
I
anybody
will never disagree with that.
We got some amazing food. So,
Yes.
and I'll see the videos and stuff like that, and they're like, "Oh, you fed an army for like $100," but you're not. You're coming from Canada going to Lebanon with the mentality of thinking the dollar is the same as here.
Yeah.
You're not living in reality no longer. So imagine those gentlemen that are coming from back home to here,
Right.
and you had to borrow 5,000 US, or your national
Yeah.
average wage
Currency,
is
whatever it is.
$300 a month,
Yes.
and your cost of living is 250. So I can only imagine. I know some of the guys that said that they can't go back because now they've cut their visa.
Yeah.
They owe people money, and if you go back there and you're not paying that, and you're talking thousands of dollars in USDs,
Absolutely. Yeah.
they're dead. Right? So that's,
Refugee.
you're right.
You try and you apply for asylum because, again, if the process was taking, let's say, you apply for asylum, 6 months later you have a decision because due process you are in front of a judge and a decision was made, things will be different. But now it's taking 3 years. 3 years is a very long time.
Is it because of the new strain of the amount of applications, or is it?
It's also because of that, because you have so many people applying for asylum and everyone is frustrated. CBSA is frustrated. The Immigration Refugee Board is frustrated. The immigrants that are here, that are waiting for 3 years,
No.
they are frustrated too, because you have a lot of fake stories. People who just don't want to go back because
That's
they
right.
couldn't study, they couldn't, work or whatever. But you also have the real ones. You also have people fearing for their lives who had actually to flee the country, that left their family back there, and they cannot see them because obviously when you apply for asylum, you cannot go back to your country. And what happens to your wife and kids that are there?
Can you ever go back?
As a citizen, as a Canadian citizen, yes.
But as long as you're under
As
the
long as you're not a Canadian citizen,
You
you
cannot.
can't. And I have that very sad story of he's an Asian. He became permanent resident after being, through the asylum process in 2009. He couldn't become a Canadian citizen because he couldn't actually go through the exam, the citizenship exam,
because of a language barrier.
because of language barrier.
Sure.
He was not well educated. So from 2009 until he was waiting for to be 55, because after 55 years old, you don't have to do that exam anymore.
Interesting.
But in the meantime, he went back to Asia, like several times. And one day, I think it was in 2021, he came back to Canada and he was actually stopped at the airport. Where are you coming from? Haiti. You're a permanent resident, yes. But you became permanent resident through the asylum process,
Right.
yes. Sorry, we have to take it back and
No
send
way.
you back. Oh yeah, because when you claim asylum, you're alleging that you can't go back to your country because you fear
For your
that
life.
you're in danger for your life. And it's only when you have another citizenship, like Canadian citizenship, that you can go back and come back to Canada. Otherwise, well, you're not in fear for your life anymore. So why are you a permanent resident of Canada again?
It's a good question, though.
So,
It's actually a fantastic question. Though.
but that's exactly how the law is designed. And after more than 10 years as permanent resident, he was stripped of that permanent residency because he went back to Haiti and he didn't know. That's the problem. He didn't know that he could not do that until he became a Canadian citizen. And he
I
could
didn't
not
even know
become a
this.
Canadian citizen because of the barriers that I explained. Yeah.
Why did you become an immigration lawyer? Out of all the laws you could have practiced,
To help people. And immigration law is so complicated. It is very, very complicated. I have so many stories about, people that are doing like a very simple mistake
right?
that can have very real effects. I'm going to give you an example.
Please.
And you'll understand why I chose actually, that law. Two brothers, same father, same mother, 1 year apart. They go to the border to do when flagpole was allowed. Flagpole is, let me start by the principle. If you want to apply for a work permit, a student permit, you go online, you apply through IRCC, Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada. They take whatever time they take to answer you. It might be 3 months, it might be 1 year, and in the meantime, you wait.
Right.
Or you can go to the border, to the US border, and do the flagpole. You go to the US, you come back. That's flagpole.
Interesting.
And then you meet a CBS agent, Canada Border and Security? CBS. Anyway, CBS, everybody knows.
So I think it's service agent.
Service. In French, it's ISFC. So you meet an agent of CBSA, and he will process your application right there and then. You have an answer immediately.
Oh, interesting. Right there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But when you do that, people tend to forget that this is a border.
Right.
They can deny you entry. Two brothers from Ivory Coast. They go and apply for a work permit to have it faster. One receives the work permit, the other one is deported.
Oh, wow.
Why? Well, one had the right to apply for a work permit at the border because he was born in Italy. And the other couldn't because he was born in Ivory Coast. Again, what was the difference? Just because one had a different citizenship. So immigration is very, very complex and is very, very personalized, but it has real effect.
That's an interesting story, yeah.
Again, like you can. That's what I say to my clients. It's not the question you ask, it's who's asking the question. So if you ask me, can I apply for a work permit at the border? My answer will be, depends on who you are. If you need a visa to enter Canada, no, you can't. It's illegal. You will be deported because it's an infraction. If you don't need a visa, for example, because you have an electronic travel authorization, like if you're French, German, etc., sure, go and apply. You can. It's allowed. But it's not because you're brothers. You have the same father, the same mother, the same name, the same everything, that you have the same story. Unfortunately, no. Not with
just
immigration.
Because of the birthplace origin, eh?
Yes, because that birthplace gave him like another citizenship. So he was allowed to do that.
That's interesting.
And so that's why I became like an immigration lawyer. Well, one of the reasons to help people, because I hear horror stories and I want to be able actually to help people.
That's amazing because, it's funny, even as an example, I'm born and raised in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
My parents came during the Civil War back home.
Yeah.
And then, so my name is Yusuf Douaidar, right? So Yusuf Douaidar.
Yes.
Obviously, I'm an Arab, Middle Eastern.
Yeah.
I go to the border. If every time I want to go pick up a package, I want to go do something, I'm giving you a Canadian passport, right?
Yeah.
I enter. My English is pretty good. I don't know what you think about my English, but I think it's
fantastic.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I get there. Good morning. How are you? Usual pleasantries.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you from? He opens my passport. He reads my name, sees the face, right? Where are you from? What does it say on the passport? But honestly, what does it say on the passport?
Yeah.
And then as soon as you see my name of Middle Eastern origin, I always have a hard time. I don't care what anybody says. I have tons of friends that are Middle Eastern as well. Whenever we travel, we're always randomly selected. Why am I always randomly selected?
It's random.
What kind of randomized selection is this? It's conclusive. I'm always randomized.
Yes.
So it's a real reality. I get it. Because if you're saying the one guy is born in Italy, so it's a different type of...
Yes.
And the prestige in the citizenship world, maybe their citizenship carries better weight than the other guys. I get it.
You have agreements. Canada has agreements with different countries. Some countries need visitor visas to enter Canada. Others don't. They just need ETA, electronic travel authorization. That's the difference. If you're French, you don't need a visa. You pay $7 at the airport. You apply. A few seconds later, you have your ETA, and you can fly to Canada.
Is it easier for them?
It's easier
for francophones.
for French, for Italy, for European Union, from different countries, from Morocco.
Makes sense.
From, you have countries from, I think Mexico got revoked last year, but it really depends on which countries Canada has agreements with.
So during this whole trade war now, so they actually revoked the other one because obviously they're renegotiating the NAFTA. They reneged on the Mexican one because I know you're able to get a if you're a stonemason, an iron worker, a welder, or something like that. I remember the Red Seal trades. You're able to bypass.
Yeah.
What was the name of that one?
The one.
It's not the you don't have to go through an LMIA. It was part of the NAFTA. You were able.
Oh yeah, it's an agreement like between countries.
I forgot what it was between us and Mexico.
I see what you're talking about. Anyway, it's not coming back.
I'm not going to be able to tell it to you.
But for Mexico is a very, very good example. What happened with Mexico? If you're a Mexican national, you want to go to the US, you don't have paperwork. It's very hard to do that from Mexico to United States directly.
That's right.
That border it's becoming militarized right now.
Yeah, literally.
But you didn't need a visa to come to Canada. Just hop on the plane. You land in Montreal.
Interesting.
And then you took your car, and driving south to United States is very much easier than driving north from Mexico to the States. It's not the same border at all.
Is that why there's a lot of conflict between us and the United States right now? Because of this flag polling?
Yes. So what did the States do? They say, hey, that's too much. And Canada had to put the hammer and say, hey, Mexico, now you're getting back to before. It's not a visa that you're getting, but it's like the equivalent. You can't just hop on a plane and come to Canada anymore. That's the issue. And you also have a lot of people, again, to claim to seek asylum, you need to be on Canadian soil. You have some exceptions, but you need to be on Canadian soil. So anybody could take a plane from Mexico, come to Canada and say, hey, I want to be a refugee.
Flag polling, eh?
No, I want to be a refugee. And then you have to treat them. You have to process the refugee application. So you had like hundreds or thousands of applicants that were coming from Mexico before the visa was mandatory again. Now it's back to normal volumes, if you want.
How do you think now the immigration is going to shape the political landscape, though, in terms of, we have an election right now, 28, we're going to find out who's the new party.
It depends on who's going to be like the next prime minister. If it's Carney, he will likely follow more or less whatever Trudeau was doing.
So open policies?
Kind of. Like
I don't know.
Again, now Canadian government will apply the brakes. Now, are they going to slam the brakes or are they going to apply it softly? That's the only difference. If it's liberals, it's going to be soft. They will try and decrease it a little bit. If it's Poilievre, well, it's going to be harder. He will use different measures. Like you have, Trump is, is definitely crushing the immigration in the US.
Oh, 100%.
He's doing.
I had to redo my whole documentation from L1As to E2s, but yeah, continue.
See, so you have different ways to do that. You can do it gently, treat people as human beings, or you can decide that, well, I can take you on the street and you're on the next flight in chains. It's just a difference. You just decide how you want to apply for it.
Do you think we should be slamming the brakes or softly?
Softly again. Canada only has one border. It's with the States. It's only 40 million people here. We need people. We need workforce. Definitely. There is no doubt about it. It needs to be regulated. That's also a given.
I agree.
But how do you treat people that are already here? Do you want to treat them fairly or do you want to deport them in chains? That's the question.
I feel like the more and more you look on social media now, that whole anti-immigration divisiveness is really increasing because in other terms, they're saying, get them all out of here.
which is not going to
But the
happen.
funny part is, a lot of them that are also saying, get them out of here, their parents were immigrants.
Yeah.
That's the interesting part of that.
That's, yeah.
I feel like we're becoming very, I think Trump did something with the Make America Great Again. And now that with the whole, Canada First initiative, I agree. Listen, I love this country. I hate to see what's been happening in this country. I think this country in the last 10 years has took a dive.
People
And
are
I
taking
love
advantage.
being here, by the way. So, and the crazy part is, Ottawa, especially, I'm born and raised in Ottawa.
Yeah.
I love this place, and especially for raising a family. Listen, if you're young, you want to travel, do you?
Yeah.
But in terms of raising a family, we were just talking before this. You got 3 beautiful kids.
Definitely.
I got 2 and a third on the way, and I think it's a fantastic place to raise your children. But it's insane how divisive in Canada is now becoming. And I always found the Liberal Party, and as a parent,
forever.
they
Yeah,
used
it's
to all the immigrants support the Liberal Party because that's how they bring their families from back home, in very simple terms. And the Conservatives made it very hard, like under Stephen Harper.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think one of the biggest reasons he lost is because he lost the immigrant votes because he wanted to put I think it was if I remember correctly, it's been so long, but I think I don't know if you remember, it was like a 2-tier class system when it came to citizenships.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that's what they're doing. I feel like that's how they continuously always lose their votes with the immigrants, but Canada's built on it, So
Absolutely.
I think you guys should
Canada
be lobbying
is
the
built
government and giving them some advice.
Well, again, immigration is a chance for Canada. There is no doubt in my mind. It's just the way you actually treat people.
That's right.
You believe that there are too many immigrants? Okay, not a problem. Close or reduce the strain in the borders temporarily and treat the problem internally. What do you do with the immigrants that are already in Canada? If you decide to put them in chains and send them back, you will have a real problem doing so, because you said it yourself. A lot of us are knowing or coming with an immigrant background. Am I going to be happy to see that? No,
Of course
won't.
not.
But you have to treat people as human beings. That's it. That's all you have to do. There is no doubt that laws must be upheld. No doubt.
Agreed.
But do you want to put them in chains, or do you want to treat the problem in a different way? And I don't know which way. I'm not a politician.
Me neither.
I don't know how they're going to do it. They have way more information than I do. I only have my little scope. And they have a broader view. But they need to treat the problem here humanly, and then, reopen the border when the problem is actually treated. That's all I'm saying.
I agree with you. You know what? I know we're running out of time, and I know you got to go pick up your son. So to kind of wrap it up, I hope if the politicians are watching this, study this matter very attentively, because like I said, like you said, I think it was a little too late for all this.
Yeah.
And for a fact, and from seeing it from an immigrant side of my background, I remember at some point, like 100 years ago, Brazil was the hot spot for Lebanon. And then it stopped being the hot spot because of all this bullshit we were just talking about. So now the Lebanese people said, we don't want to go to Brazil. Then Venezuela was the next one. And then this country was the next one. And then they're going to be, if they don't handle this delicately, at some point people are going to say, we no longer want to emigrate to Canada. And then at some point you'll feel that later on.
And Canada will feel it. It's going to be harsh. It's going to be hard. Well, I'm an example. Now I'm paying my taxes. I'm a lawyer. 20 years ago, I was not here. So
I agree.
See?
I think we got to stop
I
with the
love this
business.
country, and I love helping people as well. But you need to treat people as human beings, fairly, due process. And, well, if they lose, well, they lose. If they win the right to remain in Canada, well, I'm sure they will have their little stone that they can bring, and so we can build a better Canada together.
Well, you're an inspiration, that's for sure. You're doing it to help the people.
Thank you.
And it's an honor to have you on, Dembe.
Well, again, thank you for having me.
No, I appreciate you coming on. So if you like what you guys saw today, please like, share, and subscribe. We're going to leave Demba's contact information. And I think you had socials or something like that.
Yeah.
Or however, whatever's
Yeah,
best method to get a hold of Demba, we're going to let you know. We're going to post it in the links. And if you have anybody that you know that needs an immigration lawyer or is in one of these ruts and they need advice, give them a call.
Be happy to help.
Thanks for coming on, Demba.
Thanks again for having me.